Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Well, now President Macron actually has to worry about the police as well joining the revolt. And actually, he has offered basically bonuses for them working overtime there. Police unions have expressed anger at President Emmanuel Macron's government following 5 consecutive weekends of disruptive, often violent Yellow Vest protests through France. Scores of police officers have been injured since the citizen-driven Yellow Vest movement was launched in mid-November, most in violent clashes with anti-government protesters. 3 unions have denounced working conditions and complained about what they said were strained resources as officers have been sent in to clear roadblocks and restrain violent thugs who have joined street demonstrations to stir chaos and provoke the police. The Alliance Union announced a black day for police as it urged the Macron government to invest in rebooting France's tired security forces while calling for a work slowdown on Wednesday to protest against planned cuts in the national police budget. Alliance is encouraging officers nationwide to stay inside their stations and to only respond to emergency calls. Police are not doing well and nobody is listening. Frédéric Lagache, Deputy Secretary General of the Alliance Union, said the 2019 budget is insufficient, he deplored. And another union, UNSA Police, said on Monday its members would only provide minimum services from Tuesday and asked for a meeting with Mr. Macron. The union asked the centrist government earlier this month for police working to quell the Yellow Vest protests to be paid overtime. The UNSA union warned police that it would stage copycat Yellow Vest protests and storm roundabouts if its demands were not met. These roundabouts are not reserved for Yellow Vest only, UNSA said in a statement. And a third union, UNIT SGPFO, said on Monday police are at the end of their tether and called on all officers to take part in Act 1 of protests on January 26 if the Macron government fails to respond to unions' demands by January 11th. Well, guys, this is looking worse and worse for Macron and the French government. This is really looking worse because you're going to end up with the police jumping over to the other side, and then they're going to end up having to call on the military. And, that is going to be something to behold. And let's hope things get resolved. Maybe, Macron will actually step down. Maybe, I'm not even 100% sure how the French government works. If they have to go through a no confidence vote and all that. How they could go and try to reconstruct a new government. It's all pretty interesting, but it's not looking good, and I would not want to be in his shoes, that's for sure. So there's a lot going on with Venezuela as well, and if you guys haven't checked out yet, check out Florida Marquis. I enjoy his channel. I've probably only watched maybe 10 of his videos, somewhere around there, 7 to 10 of them. But I really like his style, and I think he's very insightful, and especially when it comes to the whole Venezuela situation. He's really been way ahead of the curve with that. And so Venezuela and Russia, as we had said, they've made some agreements, and Russia is now announcing military bases in Venezuela officially. And Venezuelan news agencies citing the Russian state outlet TASS reported on Monday that the socialist dictatorship has agreed to allow Moscow to establish a military base on the island of La Orquilla in the Caribbean Sea, the first such base since the end of the Cold War. And it's about 1,350 miles from Key West, Florida, less than 1,000 miles from the American base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, offering the Russian military close proximity to the United States. And so, this is definitely an escalation that's going on. And if you have checked out the works of Florida Marquis, he was talking all about these military exercises going on in the interior of Brazil with a variety of different countries taking part in what could only be assumed to be basically an invasion of Venezuela. And then you have Maduro making all these statements, saying anybody comes and invade, we're going to make sure that they, die here, and it's going to cost them their lives to invade. So, and then also talking about 1.6 million militia. So if he's getting a militia going, trying to round up as many citizens as he possibly could and arm them, he really does think he's going to get invaded. And perhaps that really has been on the table. And, the question is it still on the table now? Now that Russia has stepped in, is it still on the table? Would the U.S. and a U.S.-led coalition dare to do that now? Or even proxies? Would they dare? That's a huge question because, that's the question about whether or not we're really going to see World War III, because if that did happen, it very easily could escalate into World War III. So this is something most definitely to watch, and watch all the moves going on. So now we have the White House suggesting it could back down from a $5 billion border wall demand. And so Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders did say that the White House could back down from its demand for $5 billion for border wall funding. And part of this is all about the shutdown possibly coming. Parts of the government will shut down on Saturday if lawmakers don't pass spending bills. And Trump has threatened to let funding lapse if he cannot secure money for the border wall. So, he's basically getting it from every side for sure, as we can see with everything that's going on around him. And this is from Attorney General Barbara D. Underwood. And AG Underwood announces stipulation dissolving Trump Foundation under judicial supervision with AG review of recipient charities. So, following a court decision in favor of the Attorney General, the Trump Foundation has signed a stipulation agreeing to dissolve under judicial supervision with review and approval by the Attorney General of the proposed recipient charities of the Foundation's remaining assets. So there's a lot happening right now. Of course, we have Chris Matthews, who is very, very liberal. Obviously, he can't stand President Trump. And he's predicting that Trump could resign in the coming weeks. Is that surprising coming from Chris Matthews, who's obviously extremely liberal? And is he just basically hoping? Well, yeah, it could be wishful thinking on his part from his perspective and the outlook. But again, they're always throwing these things out there. And that's how these things start to cement in the consciousness. And then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is potentially a presidential candidate, and she's a Congress member from New York, and she's also very liberal, is pointing out the $21 trillion worth of Pentagon financial transactions that could not be traced, documented, or explained. And so, that's a big statement. Now, she's using that to say that that means that 66% of Medicare for all could have been funded already by the Pentagon, and that's before our premiums. So she's going to use it, as leverage in one of the things that she would like to promote. But the thing is here that you have basically, a Congress member talking about that $21 trillion that nobody knows where it is. Of course, we do. We think it's probably in Black Ops, most likely, as well as other things. Some people have said, well, that's a big chunk of probably your secret space program. And if anybody doubts, and I've heard people doubt that they could do mass chemtrail spraying because of the costs, how much do you think 21 trillion would get you? And that's just really starters. And this is just crazy because this is money that's gone. Now there's others that say what this is really going to is building the top secret bases under the ground for the top politicians, the cabal, the Illuminati, because the Nibiru system is coming in and they know that most things above ground are going to get wiped out. So what they're doing here is building basically their own luxury bunkers and condos under the ground so they can escape and survive. So there's lots of different thoughts on what's happening with it, but that's an awful big number to not know what happened to it. And so the Trump administration is moving to ban bump stocks. And so bump stocks basically will take a semi-auto and make it full auto. And, that's something that, of course, gun enthusiasts or somebody that is very worried about home invasion might like to have on their person. Of course, it makes for, something that's incredibly powerful, as full auto obviously can inflict tremendous damage very, very quickly. So the Trump administration Tuesday banned bump stocks, the firearm attachments that would allow semi-automatic weapons to fire like machine guns, and were used in the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history. So the regulation gives gun owners until late March to turn in or destroy their devices. After that, it will be illegal to possess them under the same federal laws that prohibit machine guns. And so, this is definitely one of those subjects that will scare some of the people that are very pro-Second Amendment. But also, we've seen horrible mass killings, of which many people believe that there could be like MK Ultra mind control going on in some cases, and many people also believe that a lot of these are false flags just to do that very thing. And so some will look at that as basically, okay, that's a step down the road to taking their guns. Theresa May calls off MPs' vote on her Brexit deal. And, my friends in the UK are keeping me up on this and saying it doesn't look good for her. Things are really unraveling. Whose shoes would you rather be in, hers or Macron's? Because they both are in a lot of hot water, really. Obviously, I think Macron has it a little bit tougher, but, this is also a very, very tenuous situation. And so she called off Tuesday's crucial vote on the Brexit deal so she could go back to Brussels and ask for changes. As it stands, the deal would be rejected by a significant margin if MPs vote on it, she admitted. But she said she was confident in getting reassurances from the EU on the Northern Ireland border plan. But European Council President Donald Tusk said the remaining 27 EU countries would not renegotiate the deal, while EU leaders would be willing to discuss how to facilitate UK ratification of the withdrawal agreement at Thursday's summit in Brussels. He suggested that controversial Northern Irish backstop, which the DUP and many Tories want removed, would remain in place. The Prime Minister's U-turn came after she and senior ministers had spent several days insisting the vote must go ahead, despite the scale of opposition from MPs being obvious. And so it prompted angry scenes in the Commons, with the MPs from all sides complaining that the government had denied them the right to have any say in the move. And this looks like a sticky mess going on here. And, behind the scenes, many think that this is really all about the globalists not letting go and trying to hang on to this. As, we've seen tremendous political changes in the last couple of years, and this year especially has been very contentious, to say the least. Now, something you guys should know if you're up in Ontario, power workers may be striking, or they may have a lockout, and this could cause rolling brownouts across Ontario. And of course, if you guys, don't have power and you don't have a wood-burning stove, a fireplace, a generator, any way of, getting power, it's going to be tough to stay warm. And up there, it could be tough to stay alive if we get some really intense cold snaps. So something to think about, guys, for all our family up in Ontario. Japan is going to have their first aircraft carrier since World War II. And, there is another big buildup going on militarily, and it is in Japan. And part of this is really just, I believe it's basically because, the U.S. knows how much China and Russia are improving on things. And China is, obviously growing, in so many ways, leaps and bounds, and both of them together are starting to assert themselves. And that's the big difference. Since the Cold War ended, for the most part, it's like Russia took a big step back. Now, China was not at the point that the Soviet Union was at in regards to strength compared to the United States. they've been up and coming for a long time, and now they're at the point where they are competing on the world stage. And so the feeling is that Japan is basically being utilized in order to help negate the effects of China's growth, and they're moving forward rapidly in the technological area as far as the military is going. So Japan is poised to put its first aircraft carriers to sea since World War II, refitting its Izumo-class warships to carry U.S.-designated F-35B fighter jets, the government announced on Tuesday. And in its 10-year defense program guidelines, Tokyo said it would buy 42 of the F-35Bs, which are designed for short-run takeoffs and vertical landings. And these planes will be available for deployment aboard two flat-top ships, the JS Izumo and the JS Kaga, which at more than 800 feet long and displacing 27,000 tons are the largest ships in the Japanese fleet. Under the drastically changing security environment around Japan, the government will take all possible measures to protect the lives and assets of the Japanese people. And they are spending a lot more money, and we had talked about before the fact that they came to a new defense agreement with the United States, and a lot of it was just basically, well, it's multi-purposed. You know, they are trying to build up because they're more worried about China and Russia, but they're also trying to alleviate the imbalance of trade with the U.S. and being an ally of the U.S. You know, they're trying to do what's best for the U.S. as well as themselves. So Saturn is losing its rings quicker than expected, NASA is warning. And so at some point in time, they may be a relic of the past. But don't worry, they could disappear in less than 100 million years, which isn't that long when you consider the gas giant itself is more than 4 billion years old, according to mainstream science. And so the changes, and there are changes going on, not just in the Earth, but in our solar system and in our galaxy as well. So there's all sorts of amazing things going on with the planets themselves, and this is just more evidence. Of course, they're putting on such a timeline that none of us will be around when they're gone, so it's nothing that we have to concern ourselves with. And over in Phoenix, they have more mysterious explosions that are putting North Phoenix neighborhood on edge. And so it was about 2 months ago that they had some of these random explosions going off, and now they're starting to get some more coming in. So there was a photo of a white pickup truck that's being called Vehicle of Interest that's been released. However, no arrests have been made. No suspects have been identified. But the latest incidents happened over the weekend at a neighborhood several miles south of the previous blasts. Residents report similar experiences to previous incidents: a loud boom, flash of light, and then really no damage, no evidence of what ended up blowing up. So kind of interesting, something explosive. As this one person that listened to it said, I've shot ARs, handguns, different types of calibers of gun. It was not a gunshot by any means. And I saw the camera, saw the explosion. It has to be something. So it's interesting. But of course, out that way could be something military going on as well. You never know. And, it also kind of makes me wonder about perhaps fireballs coming down. Although, if it's in the same area continuously, you would be suspicious. And so Laverne has passed on. Penny Marshall of Laverne and Shirley. If you guys remember that, those of you that are ancient like myself, it was a show that was, enjoyable for the most part. And anyway, she has passed on due to complications from diabetes. And she was 75. So my friends, as always, thumbs up to support the channel. Please do subscribe, click the bell, get all the notifications, and join our growing family. Share with as many people as possible. I look forward to your comments and your thoughts. And as always, my friends, God bless and namaste.